Being trapped at a shelter with a whole bunch of people, especially a whole bunch of extroverts, was probably my biggest fear on trail. Not bears, not weather, not lack of food, but extroverts. That's what we're going to talk about today. Alright y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Trey, my trail name is Early Riser, and as always, I'm always grateful that you're here. So today, I just wanted to have a little fun because this was on my mind and I was having some comical memories about my time on the AT. And most of them revolved around people. And I've got a couple of stories I want to share, but ultimately it's going to tie back into introverts and extroverts. Which are you? Do you know which one you are? And do you know how that affects other people? Let's just define our terms real quick. So really, when we're talking about introvert or extrovert, we're talking about how do social situations affect their energy. For extroverts, most social interactions charge their batteries. For introverts, it's just the opposite. A lot of social interaction tend to drain their batteries. Neither is good or bad. It's just the way that you are. And it's the way that people are. So understanding that everybody around us aren't the same as us is key to having good relationships on places like the Appalachian Trail. Now, what a unique environment. This tiny little 2-foot trail that goes from Georgia to Maine has thousands of people hiking on it every year. And all of these people are different. They all have their social preferences. If you read Facebook pages and most of those other thru-hiking social media resources, a lot of people say, man, it's the people on trail. Like, it's the people that make the journey great. And that's probably true for a lot of people. But for a lot of people, that is not necessarily the case. As a huge introvert, and why do I call myself a huge introvert? I have taken tons of tests. I've been studying this stuff for almost 2 decades now. And I score about as high on the introverted scale as you can score. Now, if you think about introverts and extroverts, it's really just a normal distribution, normal bell curve. Most people are in the normal range. They have a little bit of extroversion, a little bit of introversion. They might fall on one side, but they can be either, depending on the situation. All right, another way to look at introverts and extroverts are extroverts like to have more experiences with less reflection. Introverts like to have less experiences with more reflection. What does that mean? Ultimately, the way this is always kind of hard to describe, so I'll just use my experiences as the example. So I've never had a bunch of friends where we would go out and like, hey, let's invite 20 people out to go out with us. I'm like, no, let's just keep it me, you, and maybe one other person, so that can be a really intimate setting. And then at the end of the night, I'm going to sit and process of how that evening went. Grateful that I had those 1 or 2 acquaintances all night that we could build a deeper relationship. Extroverts are kind of the opposite. They're like the ones in the van saying, hey, come on, let's go. Everybody come to dinner. Let's do a dinner with 25 people. That just made my skin crawl a little bit. Like going to dinner with more than about 2 or 3 people to me is about equivalent to CIA torture in some way, maybe waterboarding. But that's the difference. Extroverts need more people to charge those batteries. Introverts need less people and less interactions to charge their batteries. Introverts still need social interaction. We're all humans. That's part of being a human. We just like it in different ways. Now, neither one of these things are good or bad. It's just the way people are. And we just have to accept people at their face value. And that's where a lot of the rub comes in sometimes. Because we as humans, we lose sight of the fact that we are seeing things only through our lens, our perceptions, and we think that everybody else should be like us. And that's why extroverts will look at an introvert and say, man, you're kind of weird. That guy's kind of weird, kind of shy, doesn't really talk a lot. Like my wife is an extrovert, and I think that's why I married her. I love her outgoing personality. She loves to talk to people. And the more people, the better. But she has to make excuses for me when she's talking to those people and they're like, hey, you want to come over for dinner and do this stuff? And she knows I'm going to say, hell no, I'm not going over there for dinner. So her whole time, like our 20 years of being married, 20 plus years, is she's had to make excuses for me of why I'm not going to participate in these social interactions. So again, these are the things that we deal with in our normal life. Let's talk about trail life and how I experienced some of this on the trail. So as an introvert, walking north from Springer, really, I didn't have any expectations on social interactions. I started in February, didn't think there was going to be a lot of people out there. But folks, it's the AT. There's tons of people out there. So I was coming in contact with folks. Had my first hostel experience at Dix Creek Gap when it was Top of Georgia Hostel back then. It's changed names since then. Stayed with some people in the hostel and like, man, this is pretty good. I've kind of been mostly alone at night, camping out at shelters or whatever, up to that point on the AT, even though I'd already met some people. Staying in a hostel with folks. I think there was probably 9 or 10 of us sleeping in that hostel at the time. That was a pretty cool experience. But I'm telling you, the morning that I left, I was so freaking thankful to get out of there. I slept terrible. Couldn't wait to get back on trail. That's why I always wonder. I think introverts sleep a lot better on trail in their tents, and I think extroverts sleep a lot better wherever they are, as long as there's people around. The first major experience that I remember where I said, oh boy, this is going to be torture, was I made it through the knock one morning and I did the climb, the 7-mile climb out of the knock. And there's one shelter kind of right before you get to the top of the climb, and I was going to stay there that night. Storm was coming in, a cold front was coming in. It was going to get down to the low 20s, high teens that night. And I was like, man, maybe staying in the shelter would be a good idea. So as I'm approaching the shelter, I'm like, please God, don't let there be anybody here. But there was. And here's the quintessential extrovert that I learned later on. This is what happens at shelters. So I come around the bend and he sees me, and man, he's been waiting for somebody to get there for a while because he just starts blabbering. And this is what I don't enjoy as an introvert, right? I don't want to have meaningless conversations with you just because you need to talk to somebody. So, I see that. I self-critique myself for that. Like, I should just give that to people for a little while and let them get that out so they can recharge their batteries. But I'm so repelled by it, I was just wanting to run. But I couldn't run because I also don't want to hurt the guy's feelings. So I sat there in the shelter and we're talking and I ate. And I'm like, please God, let somebody else show up so I can kind of sneak away. And luckily, more people showed up. Tons of people showed up that night. So I was able to sneak away from him and set up my tent while he was engaging the other dozen people that ended up showing up at the shelter. But that defined my experience from then on. I knew I had to be careful about getting stuck in a shelter because you never know when that extrovert's going to be there and cannot stop talking all night. Now, this isn't me thinking extroverts are bad. Absolutely not. Again, I married one because I think opposites attract. But man, when I'm having an experience like on the AT and I've been hiking all day and I'm tired, like I don't want somebody else's experience to be thrown into my mental space at that point in time. I hope that makes sense. This is why I don't necessarily like a lot of social interactions when I'm doing something like a thru-hike, because some days I'm struggling on my own. And it is good to hear other people's experience and hear that they're struggling too. But some days I'm just having a great day. I'm having a wonderful experience and I'm right where I'm supposed to be and the universe is unfolding perfectly and I'm dealing with my mental demons and everything's good. And then you come up on the extrovert of the person and man, they're just blabbering. And then all of a sudden you're taking on their energy and their experiences because they're telling you every single one of them. And like, man, I don't even have enough space inside for that right now. And I think as an introvert, that's why I don't like being around a lot of extroverts on trail. Doesn't mean I don't value them as people. There are times where I really loved being around talkative people in some hostels, but I found myself staying at less and less hostels as I got farther north. Not only because there were less hostels as you move farther north, but I really needed that time in a hotel room by myself to recharge those batteries so I could step back out on trail and push north. Another funny experience that I remember having was up in New York. So I remember this day clearly. The weather was getting a little bit warmer. I remember sweating a little bit that day. And I had a little MP3 player that I carried with me, and it had a radio on it. So you could digitally tune in a radio station. So I just wanted to try it. I knew I was in New York, so I turned on, I tuned in some stations, and it was a New York City radio station. Man, I was blown away that day because I remembered the day I started in Georgia. I was listening to Atlanta radio and, what was it? 80 days later, I'm listening to a New York City radio station and I had walked there. So amazing to me that day. So I got to a shelter and it had some camping areas down, probably about 40 yards away, down a little valley, little gully, I should say. Set up my tent, got inside my tent and started changing and cleaning up a little bit. And it's still early, it's probably 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I hear 2 guys get to the shelter. And I don't think they were together, but they arrived at the shelter about the same time. And for the next, and I kid you not, 4 or 5 hours, one of those dudes did all of the talking, nonstop. The only thing I ever heard the other guy get to say was, yeah, me too. Yeah, that kind of happened to me. And he would start going down a story and the other dude would just overstep him and keep talking. I was petrified to get out of that tent. No way was I going to introduce myself into that world. I felt sorry for the other dude that was there. Maybe he was willing to endure it. No way I was introducing him, going to try to save him. I stayed in that tent and didn't come out. I peed in a bottle until it got dark. Like, I was not leaving the tent. I remember hearing the extroverted dude up there saying, hey, I hadn't seen anybody down in that tent yet. I'm about to go down there and see who that is. Make sure they're okay. And my eyes were all big. I'm like, oh God, please don't come down here. Please, God, don't come down here. And he never did, because somebody else showed up and then he just got to start all over again. So until that dude went to sleep, I think I went to bed at 8 o'clock, maybe put earplugs in finally. That dude had not stopped talking the entire time. So let me ask you guys this. No matter if you're the introvert or the extrovert, do you understand how your behavior affects other people? And I think that's the whole message we're trying to get at today. How I'm behaving affect the people around me? If I need interactions to recharge my batteries, how can I do that without just being a freaking annoying bastard to other people? Or if I'm an introvert and I need time by myself to recharge my batteries, how can I do that in a way where people don't think I'm avoiding them and being non-social? Man, it's hard. It's hard on trail. It's especially hard in real life. Those are the things we should be thinking about as humans. And I'm telling you, if you are an introvert and you think shelter hopping is going to be for you, stand by, because you are going to have people talking and interacting with you the entire time you're there. And that's okay. Maybe you want to give back and let those people recharge their batteries, and maybe you recharge yours when you're hiking alone every day. These are just some of the decisions you're going to have to figure out as you're moving north. But for me personally and my sanity, I like to hike alone. I like to camp alone. If I see people during the day, though, I stop and I'm joyous and I have good conversations with them. But they're those shallow conversations. Hey, how's your hike going? How's your day going? It's good to meet you. Those type of conversations last about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'm going to head on up the trail. There were some exceptions. I was a blessed human being because I met a couple of guys named Stamps, named Kansas, and named Fresh Ground. But you'll see an introvert, once they get comfortable with 1 or 2 people, like I did with Kansas and Fresh Ground and Stamps, then you can't get that introvert to shut up. Hell, they're probably glad I'm by myself now for a little while. But I did really enjoy their company. Those are 3 really good dudes. And yes, Fresh Ground was actually hiking the AT the year that I hiked the AT. So what a blessing to get to meet that dude when I got into Hot Springs in Kansas and Stamps. I met Kansas and Stamps actually in the Smokies. We stayed in the same shelter one night. I didn't even know it because there was like 9 or 10 dudes in there. So I would meet them and build a deeper relationship with them later on. You can already hear the words, right? The introvert. I built a deeper relationship with these guys. But it was nice. It was good to be around Fresh Ground. They honestly made my experience better because I related so well to them, and it was my little group of dudes who I trusted, and I let my introverted self, I suppressed it a little bit so I could have at least spend some evenings with them on trail, and I loved it. And then that split up really quickly, and I really never saw those guys again. Me and Stamps crossed each other's path once again in Pennsylvania. Got to spend the afternoon with him. We were shopping Walmart and stuff, and then we lost each other, and I never saw him again. And that brings us to Tramleys. I hear a lot of people on Facebook and other places saying, hey, I don't really want to hike alone. Does anybody want to start with me? And then the resounding replies are always, hey man, there's going to be tons of people on trail. You won't spend any time alone if you don't want to spend time alone. And that is so true. If you're scared of being alone, the Appalachian Trail is right for you. However, just recognize that that comes at a cost too. If you're an introvert and you want to be alone, there's space for that out there as well. You can camp wherever you want on the AT for the most part. Once you get into the Northeast and in the Smokies, there's some restrictions. But for the most part, you can still camp anywhere you want. So the trail is for everybody. That trail is amazing for everybody. I had to learn this and had to concede to this. You're not in control. The universe is in control on that trail. And there are times where you're going to be pushed into your discomfort zone so you can grow. And there were times that I had to be around a bunch of extroverts, and at the end of it, I was exhausted, but I walked away saying, damn, that was good for my soul. I needed that. I grew a little bit today. And it's going to be same for some of the extroverts. Like, you're going to find yourself alone some nights out there. And that is the growth opportunity. Embrace it. It is okay. In fact, I would say force it sometimes. Force yourself. If your comfort zone is to be around people all the time, force yourself to go off alone some nights and learn to be by yourself and learn to be with the thoughts in your head and learn to be with the noises outside of your tent and just enjoy you. And if you're an introvert, I offer the opposite advice. Force yourself to go to those shelters, sleep in there with all the freaking gas-passing snorers in there who can't stop telling you about their gear and their experiences throughout the day, and revel in it. Revel in being around other human beings who are on the same experience you are. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, the magic unfolds on the trail. But let's push aside the trail real quick. And the same thing happens in life. Like, the trail is nothing but an experience that shows us we could be doing the same exact thing in our lives. We just choose not to because it seems a lot more chaotic than life on the trail. So when you're in your daily life, no matter if you're an introvert, extrovert, whatever you are, you should continually push yourself outside your comfort zone just so you can grow. If we're comfortable, we're not growing. That's the fact. So there are times when you need to push yourself so you can grow as a human. So if you're that introvert and you hate going places with people, and that's me. I don't do anything with people if I don't have to. Push yourself. Build some of those deep relationships. And then try to build some relationships that are just whimsical. It's going to be hard. You're probably not going to be able to do it, but at least you try. And in that trying, you grow. And it's the same for extroverts. How can I be around less people, or when I am around people, how can I do a little less of this and a little more of this? How can I listen more and talk less? And those are the challenges we have to face because it's hard. We like to talk or we like to listen. Learning to do the opposite is hard, but that's how we grow. All right, y'all. This is a fun episode as always. I hope there was something beneficial in here, but really I'm just going to come on here and just share some experiences. And I think you guys commenting down below and giving us your experiences and how you're thinking about things, that's what grows all of us. So don't just click off the video and go watch something else. Please hit subscribe, hit the like button because that helps this channel grow. And then go down in the comments and at least give us some of your experiences. Doesn't have to be hiking. Just needs to be life, and we're all living it. We're all humans, so we're all experiencing it. All right, y'all, last thing. If you're not meditating, I argue you are already behind in life. I have a channel called Trapdoor Meditations. The link is down in the description. Just go down there and click on it. Get in a quiet room, put on some headphones, and let me walk you through some awareness or some stillness. And yes, there's going to be some commercials in there because that channel's not monetized. It's not big enough yet. So YouTube's going to try to make theirs. So if you're not a premium YouTube subscriber, like, the best $14 I spend every month is not having to listen to commercials on YouTube. So if you're not a premium subscriber, just know there's going to be some commercials pop up in those videos. It's okay. That's the point of meditation. When the chaos enters, let it pass and be able to let it go. All right, I'll see y'all over on that channel, and we'll see you back here again soon.